Hello, everyone. Welcome to StarDog Demo Day. Thank you for joining us. StarDog Demo Day is an opportunity to get in front of you guys with some demonstrations of how Knowledge Graph and its tools are being utilized to solve challenges in various industries and across various use cases. So thank you for joining us. My name is Ingrid Ramos, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at StarDog. We have with us today Tim Sedlak, Solutions Consultant. And today's topic is going to be, we called it Patient 360. But what we're really focusing on is a specific use case regarding data sprawl in the healthcare industry. We have various customers across the industry, some of them working on R&D, others working on how they can better provide services to their patients. So that's what we're going to hone in on today. This is being recorded and a copy of it will be sent to you via email after we render it. Feel free to ask questions using the chat tool or the Q&A tool. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, Ingrid. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. As Ingrid mentioned, my name is Tim Sedlak. I'm a solutions consultant with StarDog. I'm looking forward to today's demo day. And as Ingrid mentioned, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. If I can't get to them in real time, I'll make sure to come back to them at the end. Just really quickly, what we'll cover today, we're going to give a brief overview of Knowledge Graph. We're going to talk about some challenges in the healthcare industry as it relates to data. Then we'll move quickly into a demo, and then we'll end with Q&A. So what are knowledge graphs? Well, as a simple definition, knowledge graphs are a flexible semantic data layer for answering complex queries across data silos. A knowledge graph as a platform functions as a kind of data fabric or mesh architecture that provides linked data across the enterprise. They are flexible and can evolve with minimal effort, and knowledge graphs can query data where it lives. This is key because otherwise every project has to start with moving or copying data. And as data volumes grow, it gets increasingly more difficult with every new project. So all of these combined into an enterprise knowledge graph foundation, providing an enriched contextualized layer that is well suited for taming many of the challenges with existing enterprise data management approaches. The rapid growth of electronic health records has created large and complex big data challenges. The rapid explosion of electronic health record data, as I mentioned before, has made it difficult to tame, oftentimes whether through acquisition or through having multiple systems. You're left with disparate data sources that you want to bring together. And a lot of these systems are built on rigid relational systems that are complex and confusing to understand. And then obviously in the healthcare industry, there's a lot of concerns around sensitive data, PII type information. So healthcare organizations are shifting to patient-focused information models using semantics that benefits the organization, the providers, and their patients. Knowledge graphs can help by providing real-time access to this data, connecting to the data regardless of the source, creating intuitive business-oriented data models, and applying fine-grained security. This drives innovation to deliver the next generation of healthcare solutions, enabling healthcare workers to focus on patient care instead of data wrangling. Today's demo features data from an electronic healthcare records system that collects information on patients, encounters, conditions, and other concepts. As we work through the demo, I'd like you to imagine how a knowledge graph platform can help providers personalize medicine, more accurately diagnose conditions, and develop the best treatment plan for patients. With that, I'm going to start today's demo. We're going to start in StarDog Explorer. StarDog Explorer is our graph search and exploration tool. So we're going to begin by searching for a term diabetes. This is a common condition that a lot of patients have. As you can see here at the center of the screen, our Stardog Explorer UI has an input form where I typed in the word diabetes. We're going to search for that. We get 5 results back related to conditions, care plans, and treatments. So this is just one way that you can search your knowledge graph. Stardog also has a query builder, which is a data model driven query experience, which I will demonstrate now. So we have a patient named Timmy Schaefer, and if we want to understand all of the conditions that he's been diagnosed with, as well as the different prescriptions that he's been prescribed, we can use a Stardog's query builder to customize a query against the knowledge graph. So first, I'm going to select patient. This is a concept that has been defined in our data model or on ontology. I am going to limit my result set to just the patient I'm looking for. So as I begin typing, you'll see in real time a recommended value. And so here is my patient, Timmy Schaefer. And there's actually going to be 2 parts to this query. So I'm going to duplicate the first part, and I'll come back to the bottom half in a moment. So as I mentioned, I'm looking for patient diagnoses and conditions. So you can see here, again, all the relationships that are available to me. Again, this is defined in my ontology or my data model that I've built. And so then the only possible relationship or target of has diagnoses is the diagnosis itself. And then I want to look at for the conditions. And on the bottom half here, I've already defined which patient I'm looking at. And I want to look at the different prescriptions that a patient has and what conditions those or what medical reason that medicine has been prescribed for. So now I can do a search, and we see here we get 1 result. This is actually our list view, but by selecting the graph option here in the top left, we can actually bring this to a graphical result. And just cleaning up the screen a little bit and zooming out, we can see here that Timmy Schaefer has actually been diagnosed 5 times with 5 different conditions. And you can see here he's actually been diagnosed twice for 1 condition, which is viral sinusitis. Now, if you notice down here at the bottom, Timmy was prescribed a medicine for contact dermatitis on September 28th. However, there does not appear to be any diagnosis for this particular condition. This might be a gap in the data that was entered by the provider. It could be a misalignment when integrating 2 legacy systems. But either way, we have a data quality issue where a medicine has been prescribed without an official diagnosis in the system. So within the Stardog platform, we've deployed an inference rule or a business rule that infers a diagnosis based on a logical pattern in the data. So given that a prescription was written for a condition, and there was no diagnosis, we can then infer that diagnosis. And I'll do this by turning on reasoning within the Stardog platform. We can toggle that on and off. And when I save this, it's going to reset the screen. And let me just reorder things again, just to clean it up. All the original diagnoses are there and their conditions, but you will now notice a new diagnosis that has been inferred based on the prescription that had been written for that condition. Now, just to be clear, this diagnosis and the relationships to the patient and the condition were all inferred. These do not exist in our underlying data sets. And these are now data assets that we can take action on or query against in the graph. Next, we can expand to zooming it out. We can expand to see all of the encounters that a patient has had. So these are interactions at a doctor's office, their emergency room, really any medical setting. And we can see who the provider is for each one of these encounters. And what we'll see here with Timmy is that for each one of these encounters, we only had one provider, Harrison Blick. Now, what if you wanted to do some analysis or analytics on the patient-provider relationship? It might be a little tedious or cumbersome to always have to go through the encounters to find that relationship. So we can create a new business rule or inference rule to make a direct connection between the patient and the provider in this case. To do this, we're going to step into Stardog's Designer UI. This is our visual modeling and mapping tool. It's a low-code tool for building data models and mapping in data sources. So the first thing we want to do is create a new relationship between the patient and the provider. And we'll call that treats. And now we want to define a business rule. So we'll create a new rule. And we already have our inferred diagnosis rule. We'll go ahead and create one. We'll call it patient provider rule. And this rule will say when the patient has an encounter. And again, this rule and through this UI is all driven by the ontology to help enable users and make this process easier for them. So when a patient has an encounter and that encounter is with a certain provider, then we can infer that provider treats the patient. Again, this treats relationship is going to be inferred at query time. It doesn't exist anywhere in the underlying data set. It's something that will be executed at runtime based on the logic that we've applied above. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to exit out. And then one other thing that I didn't show in Explorer, but if the provider information lacked any details about the individual provider. So we want to onboard a new data set to help fill in information about that particular provider. So we're going to add a new project resource. You can upload files, but as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to select data from a remote data source. We're not actually going to copy that data into the platform. You can see here I've defined a few data sources that are available to me. The data that I want for today is in Databricks. Select next. And you can see here we actually have 3 Databricks databases available. I want my electronic healthcare records database. And my table that I want is actually called doctors. And we'll get a little preview of that data here. It's pulling that directly from Databricks. And I will create a new resource called doctors. And then the kind of last step is mapping that table and its columns to the class and attributes within the data model. So I'm going to add a new mapping. We'll call this map doctors. And I will come over here to our mapping tab where we've got our attributes on the class defined. And we have columns from the table available to select and map in this dropdown. But I'm going to leverage Stardog's suggestive mapping feature to help me save time. You can see here with a high degree of confidence, it's recommending that these columns on the right be mapped to attributes on my class on the left. I'm just going to accept all of these. I could reject them if I want it. And then I'll select the ID field as my primary identifier. Now I just want to modify kind of the base part of our primary identifier to align with data that's already in the graph. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. And I'm going to come back to the model here. And then there's one last thing that I would like to do. Provider information could be sensitive in nature. So we're going to add what we call a sensitive property. This will restrict access on the fields that this is applied to the end user. So we're going to say address is part of a PII sensitive property group. And this means when we go to view this data, we will not be able to actually see that value of the provider's address in the graph. Now from here, I can either export, and this will download all the artifacts that I would need to include these changes in a DevOps pipeline to deploy the changes to different environments. But I can follow the automatic publishing workflow, which will allow me to deploy these changes directly to my knowledge graph. So I selected the environment and the database I want to deploy this to. I'm going to actually replace my existing data model. I'm going to publish my sensitive properties and my inference rules or business rules that I've defined. And I'm going to create a new virtual graph. This we'll just call demo day VG. And now I'm going to publish this. So that's published the rules, the new virtual graph, and the sensitive property restriction to my graph. I can come back into Stardog Explorer, and I'm actually just going to refresh the graph here. This is to capture all of the data model changes and everything that went in. And basically what this is doing is re-executing that query I'd run in Query Builder. But if I expand by Timmy Schaefer, I'll now see that treats is a property that is available to me in the graph. So now that that inference rule has been applied at query time, that provider, Harrison Blick, is directly linked to our patient, Timmy Schaefer. And once again, this treats is something that I can take action against and query against in the graph, even though it doesn't exist anywhere in the underlying data set. So I'm going to select my provider, Harrison Blick. You can see here we don't actually have any of those details that we mapped in just yet. So I'm going to bring him to the center of the graph here, and I'll explain that. And that's because within Explorer, it allows you to define the scope of your queries. So right now, the Stardog Explorer is only looking at data that is stored within the Stardog graph database. But we're going to tell it to look in not just the local database, but also the demo day virtual graph that we just created. And so I will save this. I also turned reasoning off, but what we'll see here is it's going to reset the graph from Harrison Blick, or that provider. And I right click on see details now, and it's going to load up all of that information for this particular provider directly from Databricks. So we have things like his name, the state, utilization, the zip code. And if you notice up here, the address is actually masked with a hashed value. Now this value can be, or that mask value can be set up to return a certain type of message as well. I just did not do that in today's exercise. So with that, I'm going to return back to my slides, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Stardog Graph platform can enable seamless integrations with BI tools. So Stardog provides a facility to bridge the flexible schema of the graph to the traditional relational models required by business intelligence tools. As I mentioned, this enables seamless use of reporting and analytics tools such as Tableau, Power BI, Cognos, and many others. All organizations can combine knowledge graphs with machine learning by using platforms that are easy to adopt and scale. And this will enable them to run advanced machine learning and AI algorithms to drive insights. In an example here, we actually use machine learning to predict a diagnosis and recommend a treatment. You can see the output of that was written back to the graph on the bottom right here. And now those predictions become things that you can take actions on, query against in the graph as well. So that basically concludes the demo portion of today's session. So what's next? You can get started for free at cloud.stardog.com. You can visit our resource center, which is available via the widget in the bottom left of our cloud portal. And you can actually try out today's healthcare demo yourself using one of our StarDog knowledge kits called the healthcare demo. So everything you saw today can be, built on top of that as well. So with that, I will take any questions or any feedback. I'll look for the chat, or Ingrid, if you have any questions queued up, please let me know.
Great, thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate it. Just going to check the chat to see if there's any questions coming through. But I actually wanted to dig in a little more to the machine learning prediction slide. And, I think that, I'm at a conference now where all they're talking about is preparing for AI and ML and machine learning and preventing data gaps and preventing bias. So I was really taken by, that piece of the use case where people are sort of trying to prepare their data for ML and AI. And I just wondered if you had anything more to add to that piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you saw in my inferencing examples, we were able to fill in the data quality gaps that existed in the underlying data set. For example, if you're trying to do some analysis on the proper diagnosis of conditions, well, we're clearly missing a particular diagnosis, in our data set. Now, does this mean maybe a provider had written that prescription and forgotten to log the diagnosis, or, as I mentioned, was this data sourced from two different legacy systems that were brought together through an acquisition? But either way, inferencing and other data quality capabilities within the StarDog platform can help fill those gaps, which I believe can improve the output of machine learning and AI algorithms and other initiatives.
Great. And then another question about who uses the platform. So I think that means, I think they're referring to maybe the end users. I mean, I'm sure Tim can tell you, a lot of the implementation is done in conjunction with the IT department, or as well as the business owners, so that it affects all functions of the organization. But I'll let Tim speak to that more.
Yeah, so StarDog actually comes with 3 out-of-the-box UIs. One that you did not see here today was our StarDog Studio. That UI is more for your your administrators and data engineers who are going to be managing and administering the knowledge graph. StarDog Designer, that's meant for our data modelers and ontologists, people who are going to be developing and designing that conceptual or semantic data layer, as well as the people who will be onboarding data from various data sources, whether that's Databricks or Snowflake or files. But again, as you saw today, it provided a low-code experience and was data model driven. So even your less technical folks could potentially participate in the data modeling and mapping exercise. And then the StarDog Explorer UI is meant for your everyday user. That UI is really intuitive. It lets you search and explore the graph without having to write any sort of queries or know any sort of special syntax or kind of technicalities about the platform. So that is really meant for your kind of everyday data analyst and business analyst user to explore.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I see on my end, Tim. So with that, I'm going to thank Tim for sharing that demo with us today. And I'm going to thank you for your time, because we know it's a precious commodity. And we appreciate that you spend a little bit of it with us. As Tim noted, in StarDog Cloud, we have a free version where we have a kit set up for you. You can go ahead and play around with it. If you have any questions, you can always email me back. I will be sending a copy of this presentation to you once it's rendered and up on our site. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you to Tim. Have a great day, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you.